So, hello, aging but dangerous peeps. Today we have here with us a money specialist. I will call you like money specialist, Jayne Ellegard, founder of Elegant Wealth. She's a woman and wealth coach, money confidence creator, engaging speaker, and author of the book Financial Empowerment for Women, your guide to courage, confidence, and wisdom. Welcome, Jayne.
Oh, thank you, Mima. I'm so thrilled to be here.
It's beautiful to have you here. We are so excited. It's so fun. Like in Germany, it's now like 6 p.m. and you just started your day, let's say like that. And it's beautiful to jump through these time zones
It
and to
is.
start the
Oh,
day
it's
again.
amazing, isn't it? Yeah. And virtually, we can be together.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, Jane, I love the life and I love the topic money. I love money so much. And I really feel I will enjoy this interview, me personally, and I'm sure also our aging but dangerous followers. You spent 34 years in the corporate world advising high net worth individuals on their financial situations. And lately, you decided to make this step into entrepreneurship and to empower and guide women to their financial freedom. There's a trend, even I noticed, there's a huge trend of waking up and choosing a possibility to take things in our hand. Can you please tell us a little bit about it? How about this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You know, I spent 34 years working with individuals, couples, families with wealth. And oftentimes I would have a husband and wife come in for a meeting. And usually the husband was really the primary decision maker around the financial decisions. And, as much as I would try to engage the women, in the conversation, I could see that, it wasn't clicking for them. They didn't really enjoy talking about it. They didn't necessarily want to be there. And that's fine, except then what would happen is the husband would die or there was an unexpected divorce. And suddenly these women would be thrown into a scary situation because they didn't understand the finances. And you might even hear them ask a question like, well, do I have to go back to work or can I afford to stay in my house? They truly didn't even understand anything really about their finances. And so, it doesn't have to be that scary and overwhelming. And I finally just decided that, this is what I need to go do. I need to help close the gap on financial education because women just have not received the education that they deserve. And, the other part of it, Mima, is that, the financial services industry has been very male dominated and it's very masculine. It was built by men for men. And that's fine, except I think it has made it very unwelcoming to women. And so, a big part of what I wanted to provide was a different kind of experience. I wanted to show women that this actually can be interesting and exciting, and yes, even fun. I mean, it really can be fun.
Sounds so good.
I know, and so that's really why I left the corporate world and made this leap was to
Also, I
truly make a
really
difference.
sorry, I also really stressed it sounds amazing because we all have so many cliches about money. Most of them come from our parents or later through our life experience. And many
Yeah.
of them are negative connotations. Some people feel abused and stressed by money. We don't talk about how much we earn and how much money we already have on our bank accounts. We avoid any money talks in conversation. Money and survival are so tight in our system. And we don't have to go that far, but please tell us your opinion. How important is for each of us to open to this important subject, to change our mindset and to analyze the personal current situation according to economical development?
Yeah. Well, the statistics are not fun, but I think they're important to understand. So, 8 out of 10 women will end up on this journey alone, whether they never marry, they're divorced, or they're widowed. And half of marriages end in divorce. with gray divorce, or the divorce of couples over the age of 50 has been on the rise. So, divorce happens. I mean, we all want to believe that our marriage is perfect and it isn't going to happen to us, but half of marriages. And then the scariest statistic, I think, is the fact that in the United States, and I don't know what the number is globally, but the average age of widowhood in the United States is 59.
Wow.
Yeah. People are shocked by that. And yet I had a friend close to me at the age of 45 pass away, and I had another at the age of 51. So both men. And, so it does happen. I mean, and so that is the average age. And so women, we're going to live longer. We're also likely getting paid less than our male counterparts. And so, we need to understand this topic, because at some point we are going to have to stand up and take responsibility for our own financial situations. And so the more that we can learn about this topic in advance of that significant life event like that happening, the better. And significant life events aren't all negative. There's also, we might inherit wealth, right? So if we inherit wealth from our parents or our grandparents, we want to be good stewards of that wealth. And so that's another, or we might want to have a career change. And in order to do that, we probably need to understand the financial aspect of being able to do that. So there's a lot of reasons to really dig in and start to understand this.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. It's so important, so life important topic. And
Yeah.
it's present in every area of our life. I know it's also personal calling for you. Um, and money is, as we already mentioned, a sensitive topic. Tell me, please, who are your clients without naming them, of course? And how do you help them to reframe and to change their beliefs, habits, and to make that first step to start listening you and following your instructions?
Well, I think my background brings a lot of credibility. So, that really helps. I mean, I started out my investment career working for one of the wealthiest families in the United States. So that right there I worked for them for 9 years. And so the rest of my career was always made my credibility very easy to establish, because I had that. I also I was a certified financial planner. I'm no longer active in that, but I was a certified financial planner, and I have my master's in business. And so I have all the credentials. I also am a certified career coach, as well as a brain-based coach through the Neuro Leadership Institute. So I have a variety of different credentials on both sides, right? On the financial side and on the coaching side. So I think that certainly helps build credibility. And I think, people have said, you're approachable. I mean, I try not to talk over people's heads, but I'm also not dumbing it down, right? I had a friend say to me once, don't pink it and shrink it, Jayne, really, women need to learn the concepts. So I'm not dumbing it down. I'm getting the concepts across, but I'm doing it in a way that's much more inviting and welcoming than I think women have ever felt. The other part of it is that I'm no longer an advisor, financial advisor, or financial planner. So I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to get your assets under management, and I'm temporary. So from that perspective, I think what happens often with women is, we've been meeting with our financial advisor or planner for the last 10 years, and we've been sitting in those meetings and not really understanding what they were saying. And at some point, it gets kind of embarrassing to say, by the way, I really don't even understand the difference between a stock and a bond.
Oh.
Right? I mean, it's hard to say at some point, because this is the person that you've been meeting with for a while and you're going to continue meeting with. Whereas I'm kind of temporary. I'm just coming in to teach you the concepts and to help get you more engaged with the conversations with your advisor, because they don't have the time to teach you the way that I do. And so, it's easier to say to me, they can ask me all the what they consider dumb questions, because, they don't have to see me again. They're not going to be in a meeting with me and feel stupid that they asked ask this question. So I think it just frees them up, and it gives them a really safe space to just ask whatever they want to ask.
Oh, beautiful. That's also very important, like, to have someone you can trust, you can build that relationship and open. I mean, it's very important. But you decided to help women. Can you tell me what are the major finance issues that women fight with? I mean, you mentioned divorce and like, but I'm sure there must be more.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think a big part of it is, I hear so many women say, oh, my brain doesn't do math, right? And so I think we've convinced ourselves that, from an early age, that, you know, math isn't easy for us. And so therefore, we must not be able to handle money. And, seriously, there's so little math in in dealing with money. I mean, and we all have computers and calculators, and so there really isn't there's not this isn't rocket science, and so it really isn't all that complicated. But I think so many women I find have convinced themselves that they can't do this. There was one woman who she's very creative, and she said to me, Jayne, I don't like math. My brain doesn't do math. And as we continued through the program, she said at one point, she said, there's really very little math. She said, it's more about gathering data. And she said, I like gathering data. So, so I think you need to set aside, what you think about finances, and open up your mind to new ways of approaching it. And that's really what I'm trying to bring, is looking at it from a very different perspective.
Um, we just said a fear, resentment, anxiety are unfortunately so often connected to money. And now, on the other bright, sunny side, we are here to tell that it doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
That fear, resentment, and anxiety can turn into safety, peace, and fulfillment. And in
Exactly.
every area of your life connected to money, and there are so many areas connected to money. How should people be acting with money? Not thinking, but acting. Do you have any advices?
One of the first pillars, so I've created what I call the 6 pillars to financial empowerment. And the very first pillar is what you were talking about a little bit ago, about money, values, and beliefs. And, I really believe that, those messages that we heard growing up are deeply embedded, and we're making decisions today based on what we heard. And so one of the first things that we do in any of my classes is I have an exercise that I call the family tree. And so I have women draw themselves at the center, then their parents and grandparents, children and grandchildren, if there are, and then their spouse off to the side. And I ask them to stop and think about, what are those messages, those money messages that they heard passed down from their grandparents to their parents to them.
Mhm.
And we go around and we share those stories. And there's stories that this is the first time that these women have shared these stories, and they're so excited for it to come to them so that they can talk about what they remember and why they feel the way that they do about money. But it's something that we never step back and think about, and yet it's so much fun. And there's so many aha moments, right? The realizations of, oh my gosh, that's why I feel this way about money, or that's why I do this with my money. But it's just taking the time. And I think as women, we so often, we're so busy taking care of everybody else and checking all the to-dos off of our task list. We don't take time for ourselves. And this is such an important topic. And nobody taught us this, Mima. I mean,
So
how many women? I mean, there was no class in high school, or, unless you went into this field, you really didn't take a class about this. And yet, I mean, how often do you use your calculus, and how often would you use money management skills? And yet we aren't teaching that to anybody. And so unless you had somebody in your life that, took you aside and spent the time, it isn't happening. And so, I just really think women need to slow down, take some time and learn about this topic, because it can have such an impact on your financial future.
definitely. But how does it get to this subject to become so big, so huge? I mean, 100 years ago, the life looked much different. The money value and energy change a lot since then. We know the money is an energy. We say female energy,
Yeah.
but I would call it even power. It changed our behavior. I don't want to get spiritual here, but I want to keep it very grounded. What is that? What women getting or what they do wrong? um, what are the mistakes that they make, and what are the things that women need to understand in order to get wealthy in the way you teach them?
Well, again, I think I have I'm very logical. I suppose that's why I was in investments, but the process that I take them through with the 6 pillars, we start with the money, values, and beliefs. We talk about the financial goals. What is it that they want to achieve with their wealth? Then we get into, your financial starting point, and I consider that to be your net worth. And so, why is that so important to understand? But if you don't know where you're at today, it's pretty hard to achieve your goals. And so, really understanding and having an awareness around that number. And then we talk about spending thoughtfully. And I always say I don't use the B word, budget, because
Okay.
I think it feels like punishment, right? And so I come at it from the perspective of, I call it treasures, promises, and joy. So tomorrow's treasures, what are you saving for the future? Your past promises, what have you already committed to, like your mortgage or your car payment, your utilities? And then whatever's left over is for today's joy. So again, I mean, giving it a different way of viewing it versus budget,
Mhm.
and kind of changing some of the terminology a little bit. And then pillar 5 is all about investments. So I call that learn to speak investments. And I use a lot of really fun analogies in there so that when you go to sit down with your financial advisor or planner, or you're talking to your spouse or anybody about investments, you can start to connect the dots, and it's going to make sense. Because I was just sharing with a group yesterday that if you have $1 million today and you just put it into a savings account for the next 20 years, the purchasing power of that money is only going to be worth about $680,000 in 20 years, because inflation is going to erode the very small return that you might get on that savings account. But if you invested that $1 million today, it's going to have it's going to be worth about 6.8 million, and in purchasing power it's going to be about 3.9 million. So I mean, you can't just save. And I think women have a tendency to think, well, I'm going to save and that's how I'm going to get, have financial freedom, but it's not. You really have to invest your wealth, and that is how you're going to grow it, and that's how you're going to achieve financial freedom and security, and all the things that I want for every woman who's out there. And so I think learning about that is so important, and yet it's something that so many women are nervous about, they shy away from, they think it's risky, but that is truly how you grow your wealth. And so you need to understand that aspect of it. And then pillar 6 is about wealth protection, and that's looking at insurance and at estate planning. And again, I was just talking to one of my estate planning friends this morning, and we were talking about the fact that you don't want to send your family on a scavenger hunt at your death. And so having things well planned and well taken care of and well thought out is so important. And then I wrap it all up with thinking about your heartfelt legacy. What is your legacy and what does that mean to you? And again, it's one of those things that I think as women, we don't step back and give ourselves the time to think about. And yet, it's powerful. Women have the opportunity to make a difference in the world, and we want to make a difference in the world. And money gives us that capability. And I think so many women have been brought up to feel shame around money.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if you have no money or you have a lot of money, there's just a lot of shame. And yet there's so much good that we can do if we have money. And so, I think if you can look at it from that perspective, that gives you a whole different outlook on why this is important.
Well, thank you so much for this inspiration. I mean, uh, you're just talking about investing. How can I know what is good for me to invest? Which kind of funds? We have these small funds, the big. I mean, it's very difficult for someone in this forest to make decision, to make a decision without consulting or without having someone on your side. Do
Yeah.
you have any advices? Like, let's say for someone who just wants to start and has no experience.
Yeah, the simplest way to get started is to use what are called exchange traded funds, or they're we love lingo and jargon in our industry, so we refer to them as ETFs.
Mhm.
So exchange traded funds or ETFs, and those typically mimic an index. So most of us have heard of the S&P 500 index or the Standard and Poor's 500 index, and that index covers 500 companies, right? So that's why it's called the S&P 500, and that gives you a very broad, diversified, approach to the stock market. And so you can invest in an exchange traded fund that basically by buying one share of an S&P 500 index ETF, you get exposure to those 500 companies.
Wow.
And so it gives you very broad exposure, and you can do it very cheaply because they're what we call passively managed, not actively managed. So there's not somebody in there picking and choosing and deciding, doing all the analytics on which stock to buy and which stock to sell. So they're just following whatever the S&P 500 index is. So if Standard and Poor's is putting a company in and taking a company out, they're doing that. But because there's very little, analysis going on, and they don't have to pay a lot of people, they're much cheaper. And so it's a really easy way to start dipping your toe in the water with, getting into the stock market, but in a really easy way that's diversified and inexpensive, because fees, cut away at your returns over time. So if you can, use offerings that are inexpensive, that's certainly helpful.
Wow. That's the knowledge I want to make deeper. Definitely. How can I know how much money I need at a certain age? Which situation I have to consider here in order to get that optimal calculations of the money that I need for my personal happiness? Of course, everything is connected to the economic standards depending on the country and family
Yeah.
status and whatever. But can you help us a little bit with that?
I think that's very individual. And I think part of it is understanding, what you're spending. So again, a lot of it goes back to those 6 pillars of, knowing what is my net worth today. And your net worth is what assets do you have? What do you own? Your investment accounts, your retirement accounts, your savings, your house, all those different things that you own. And then that's minus your liabilities, anything that you owe, so a mortgage or car loans, student loans, and that is your net worth. And that's a really important number to understand. And so understanding, because it's really kind of, like I said, I consider it to kind of be your starting point or your benchmark or your gauge for this is where I'm at today, and then how are you going to move forward. And again, understanding how you're spending. So if I know that I'm making, I'm bringing in, $100,000 for ease of purposes, and I know that I'm spending $125,000. Well, that doesn't work, right? I can't do that, and so I have to figure out what I'm spending and how I can cut back and how I can make sure that I'm actually putting money into my future. And so I think for each one of us, it's really understanding all of those concepts. And it's a lot, it's a lot to understand. But we have to know that I'm spending 100,000, or I'm making 100,000. I'm only spending 50,000, which is what would be recommended, and I'm putting away 25,000, and then I have 25,000 to spend on the things that I consider to bring joy into my life. And so, if we can figure all of that out, then we can start to move forward and figure out what we need, for our future. And so it's getting our head around those numbers. And I mean, I really encourage, again, I don't do financial advising or financial planning, but I think for most people, sitting down with a financial planner where they can put these numbers, if you kind of have your head around those numbers, they can plug them into a system and give you an idea of how well you're doing, and how if you're on target or not to achieve, your future dreams.
Is it possible to save, to invest for everyone? Are there funds outside that are reachable for everyone? I mean, there are so many people, they think, oh, I have no money for investment. I cannot do it. It's not possible at the moment. And the time is running, of course. Um, do you think it is possible with, yes,
I
you think
do. I do. I think people, everybody prioritizes what's important to them. I mean, if having a coffee every day at Starbucks is important to me, I figure out how to make that happen. If having a cell phone is important to me, I figure out how to make that happen. Right? I mean, we all know what's important to us. And I think sometimes it's taking a really hard look at ourselves.
Mhm.
But I believe it's absolutely possible for every person to, start to save. I've been in workshops with women where I've said, if you can save, $5 a day, $10 a day. I mean, just start small, and maybe it's $50 a month, but start to figure out how you can carve out whatever amount of money it is that you can make happen, and start doing that. Because I think we can't look back and kick ourselves and get mad at ourselves for what's happened in the past. What's happened in the past is gone. And so all we can do is start to look forward and figure out, what can I change today? What small thing can I do today to start to make a difference in my future? I often will suggest to people that they think about, okay, if you're going to buy a beautiful sweater and you really want it, and it's $100, and you think, okay, would this $100 serve me best to spend it on my current self, or would it serve me best to save it and get it invested for my future self? And I know that's hard. I'm not saying that this is easy. I'm really not. But I think if you can stop and ask yourself the question, how much do I really need this today? The other thing that I think is important to consider is, for young people who are starting out, life is very different for them. When I think about my parents were going to work for the same company their entire career. They got a pension, they got Social Security. They thought they were going to retire at 65 and maybe live to be 75. So you really didn't have to save much, right? Because you were going to kind of be covered. Well, today, there's probably no pension. There's probably no, I'm just going to say there's probably no Social Security. So for every year that you're working today, you're not only paying for a year of this year, you're paying for a year of your retirement, because you're probably going to live to be 95 or 100. So you've got a much longer lifespan. And so you're not going to work as many, you're going to be retired for far more years. And so you've got to think very differently about how you're approaching your finances today.
So important. Really. What about most in our community are women over 50s? And can you recommend also for them if they just decided because of some reason to save, to invest? Can you still say that's a healthy decision? It's never too late and
Never too late.
never too late?
Never too late. I'm always saying it's never too late and it's never too early. So, I don't care what age you are. I've had women go through my program from 25 to 75, and every single one of them has walked out feeling empowered and knowing that they can take control of their future. And I think that is what's so important here. And I think I had one woman say, she said, I'd had my head in the sand after her husband died. And she said, I was just kind of letting other people kind of handle things for me, and I wasn't really paying attention. And she went through my class and she said, by learning more in understanding my financial situation better, my financial stress has been dramatically reduced.
Wow.
So just by understanding it and learning more, you're more engaged and you're starting to understand, and you're involved in the discussion and the decisions that are being made. And so regardless of where you're at, and she I think she was I'm never good at telling people's ages, but I would say she was in the 70 to 75 range. So she was getting it. She was realizing that even at 70, 75, she could step up and she could change how she was viewing her future.
Oh, I've got sparkles in my eyes. So good. It's so really inspiring. You probably know Ken Fonda, the Japanese best-selling author and money Zen samurai. He believes that that money has some special connection with us, and many people have wrong expectations from money. And they have to build up the happy and sustainable relationship with money first, according to the economic standards. But how important are money beliefs from past, and can we still learn to attract more money in our lives? What do you think?
Absolutely. We can change those beliefs. And I say all the time, you have a relationship with money, period. Because think about it, every single day, you probably have some interaction with money. And one of the things I typically do, like when I'm in a workshop, I'll say in the chat, share with me, what was your last interaction with money and when was it? And it's usually that same day, and it can range from, I went to Target, I picked up groceries, I paid bills, whatever. But we have a relationship with money every single day. So why not try to make it a positive relationship? Because it's there and it's going to happen. So I absolutely agree. And, I think we all have limiting beliefs, whether it's around money or something else. And it's a matter of, first getting that awareness. So first you have to gain the awareness of what are my limiting beliefs, because mine are different than yours, Nima. I mean, you and I might have very different limiting beliefs around money. And, so trying to figure out what are my limiting beliefs? How are my limiting beliefs holding me back? And how can I start to shift what it is I'm telling myself? So if I've been afraid to ask questions in my meetings with my financial advisor, because my limiting belief was, I don't want to ask stupid questions.
Mm,
I need to turn that around and say, you know what, I'm smart. This just isn't an area I've been taught. And so I am capable of asking questions and learning more. Right. So I think we all just need to figure out what is it that's holding me back, and how can I start to shift that belief into something positive that is more uplifting and is going to help me moving forward instead of holding me back. And then, what are some small steps that I can take to, start to make those changes. And actually I have a 3-step guide to shifting your money mindset that is available, that I would love to have you put out along with this. So that would be beautiful to share. And I also have a quiz on my website that people can go take that gives them an idea. I was trying to have some fun with it. I wanted, it's asking questions about how, what is your financial situation? How much do you know? And so you end up with a score, and you're either blissfully unaware, or you're definitely distressed, or you're casually curious, or you're financially focused. So you kind of fall in one of those areas. But just kind of trying to have some fun with it, but also trying to make the point that, wherever you are, there's more to learn. I mean, I say to people all the time, I've been in the industry for a long time, there's still things I don't know. I mean, so I'm always learning. And so I think if you take the time to learn, it's just going to be so beneficial.
so beautiful movement and beautiful space where you move around, where you're really acting at the moment. I'm sure everyone thinks now, I want to have my freedom at a certain age in all areas of my life. And I hope it is still not too late. And thank you for supporting and inspiring people, telling them it's never too late. But the reality is that so many areas in our life can be colored and affected when money gets short. help us please to develop a good strategy to get that freedom. Let's say we have someone who really has no experience, zero experience. What would be the first step to undertake?
Well, read my book.
Perfect. That's definitely something that we will tag here, your book. And yes, definitely. And in your book, there are so many good, amazing advices. And tell us a little bit how you can support someone who just thought.
Yeah, I mean, when you're just getting started, it's really just it's learning. It's in the 3-step guide that I just mentioned. I also have a list of resources. So I have a list of books, I have a list of podcasts, of publications. And so part of it is learning, part of it is asking questions,
Mhm.
right? I mean, just starting to ask questions and bringing it up. I mean, you mentioned earlier the whole money is taboo, right? And I think it's that's so deeply ingrained in us, and it's we don't want to talk about money. That's bad. That's disrespectful. Somebody said to me, they came from an area where was ranchers, a lot of ranchers, and she said, you never asked somebody how many head of steer they had because that told you what they were worth. Right? I mean, I thought that was so fun. It was like, oh my, I never thought about it quite that way. But you don't ask people how much money they have, but I think we can start talking about it. And again, I mean, everything that I do is group coaching because I want women to come together and start talking about this. And so, I think that's a big part of it, is just bringing it up in the conversation. I had another woman say that after she'd gone through my workshop, she was at lunch and she started telling the other women at lunch about the workshop and everything she had learned. And she said they had so many questions. And she said she felt so knowledgeable and smart. And she was sharing, some of this newfound information that she had. And that's a great way to really, learn it even more, is by teaching it to somebody else. And so I think having that conversation and starting to bring it up is really going to help us. The other thing that I've heard come up from a lot of women is they say, well, how do I get my daughters interested in this? And you know what, first and foremost, you need to be a good role model, right? If you have abdicated the financial responsibilities in your family, that's not a good role model to set. And so first and foremost, get involved and get engaged and show your daughters that you are taking an interest, and that's going to help them not have this same gap in the financial education that so many women have today. So I mean, think about how you want them to see you. And so again, be a good role model and get engaged and start having the conversations. I think that's the best way you can start to learn, and reading, and there's some fabulous podcasts that you can listen to.
Yes, and have a patient too, because I love the story that you log in your you tag the story about the elephant and dog, that they were pregnant at the same time.
Oh,
I loved it so much. Can you please tell us a little bit about it? How important it is to be patient with everything.
yes. It, and I didn't come up with that. And I can't even think of who to credit that to. But yeah, I mean, the elephant, is pregnant over like a 2-year time span, and the dog, in that 2-year time span, has like three, births, like a dozen puppies 3 different times, and is looking at the elephant like, what's up? Why haven't you had this baby yet? And he says, well, or she says, Mama Elephant says, well, when I have my baby, it's going to make a huge impact. There's going to be a significant impact on the world, and they're going to hear it, they're going to know it, they're going to feel it. And, it's not like having a little puppy. And, so I think we do have to learn patience, and we need to know that, whatever steps you're taking are crucial and are going to get you further than if you took none. And so just continuing to, one step at a time, make it small steps, make it easy, and the other thing is, I mean, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? I mean, you can't do it all in one fell swoop. And so I think, yeah, taking things very slowly and methodically. With my book, I actually recommend don't just read it, right? Don't just rush through and read it. Take each pillar and take a week with that pillar and really feel it and really think about it and really, I've got exercises in there for women to do to think about that particular topic, and that are going to take you deeper and give you more insights than you've probably ever had. And so give yourself the luxury of that space, because it doesn't happen overnight. And so, take it slowly and go through it, and really learn it. And I think you're just going to be amazed. I mean, I've had so many women go through the program and have just incredible stories to share about the transformation and what it can do for you. I had one woman who, very creative woman, she's a partner in an advertising firm, and she said, Jayne, she said, I'm one of those women who, my husband drags me to the meetings with the financial advisor. I glaze over thinking about all the other things I would rather be doing. And she went through my program, and we came back, and she said, Jayne, she was so excited. She said, we met with our financial advisor, and she said, and I sat up straight, she said, and I asked questions with confidence. And she said, she said, if he said something I didn't understand, I stopped him and I asked him to explain the concepts. And she said, it was by far the best meeting we have ever had with him. And then she said, we got home, and she said, my husband, Steve, turned to me and said, I finally feel like we're financial partners.
Wow.
She didn't even realize he felt that way, that the burden had been placed on him because she had abdicated. And so I think there's just so much good that can come from, learning about this and getting engaged. And so, yeah, it's amazing the transformations that I've seen happen.
That's that beautiful story. Make little steps, small steps. I love it so much because people want to have everything at once, and that's
Yeah,
not possible. I
it's
mean,
not.
it's really important that, and I love it. I really love it. Make small steps, have patience with you and understanding, learn. And every step we make, make us even stronger and we are able to understand more. But I love the part that you just started. We all want to feel that it's possible to make big changes in a way, how we think, react, and behave in our life. And we also want to hear and see the true stories. Can you tell us a little bit about the people, about your clients that proceeded, turned that negative and neutral situation from 0 to 100? Some successful examples from your
Oh, yeah.
experience of
Oh my
working with
gosh.
people and their money issues?
Yeah. I mean, one woman, she shared, she said, she's a musician, and she said, and she'd never really been taught about money growing up, and, never had a class, never had anything. And, again, very creative. And so she said, when I got married, she said, my husband was more than happy to manage the finances for us. And that was great. She said, but then he got sick, and he was going to die, and so he asked their daughter to take over the finances for them. And she said, at first she let that happen, and she said, but after a while, she said, I felt like I had given her this burden. I'd put this all on her shoulders, and so she was trying to handle it all. And she said, but she said, then again, she came across my class. She said she'd been looking for something, and heard about my class, and signed on. And she said I just can't even believe how much my life has changed as a result. And I forgot exactly what her words were, but it was so beautiful. She said, I tried to nail shut that door about the finances, and ignore it. And she said, but when I opened it up, she said, I discovered this whole new world that now I'm approaching with excitement and enthusiasm. And that just melted my heart. It was like, oh, that is what I want for every woman. I want them to have excitement and enthusiasm about this area, because it can change your life.
So girls, no math. It's more organizing, it's more planning. We are good in that. Like we
Yeah.
can do it. Yes. And thank you so much for this professional advising. And I know with your book you put so many knowledge in it, and you made it affordable, accessible, and achievement, like, you know, for so many people. Tell me where we can find you. You have your website.
Yep, I have my website. So www.elegantwealth, and elegant is spelled with two L's, like my last name.
We
So
see your
we'll play on my last name, yes. And there you can buy the book. And I actually have my launch party. The virtual book launch party is April 8th. So you can sign up for that if you're interested. And the book will be on Amazon here in a couple weeks after the launch party. And it'll also be on Kindle, ebook. So it will be available. And again, yes, I wanted this to be, somebody said to me the other day, you've priced it way too cheap, Jayne. And it's like, no, I wanted this to be accessible to all women. And so that is my hope, is to transform as many financial lives as I possibly can. So
Thank
thank you for
you so
asking.
much for that. Thank you. And I'll try your quiz, definitely.
Good.
Hey, thank you so much for being our guest, for joining us, for sharing your wisdom with us, your knowledge, and I'm sure we'll hear so much from you.
Oh, thank you, Mima, so much. I so appreciate being here and being invited and having the opportunity. Thank you so much. You were fabulous. Wow, what great questions. You had done your homework.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, stay in touch. Bye. So, Jane,
Yes.
I stopped now recording. I think no, it's still,
Nope, still recording.
but it's fine.